Good morning and a happy new year to you. I'm so excited to be back here with you in 2026, and this is no small mark at all. And new year, new things, new decisions, new conversations, and as you can see, we have changed the setup for the green line and we love it over here. I hope you had an amazing holiday, a fantastic one at that. Well, I can say that I had a good one because there was a lot to eat, a lot to drink, catching up with friends and family, and I hope that you had the time to do that as well. Welcome to the year 2026, but it's important that we remember 2025 set the precedent for what will happen in the agricultural ecosystem for the year 2026, and we're here. But before we get on with the show for this morning, let's catch up with the biggest headlines that were made in the agricultural ecosystem this year. First off, the 50 billion naira presidential catalytic seed industry fund that was launched, and this was a landmark intervention to revive Nigeria's seed system and improve access to certified high-yield seeds nationwide. Secondly, the Senate pushes for National Rice Council to cut import bill, renew legislative focus on rice self-sufficiency as Nigeria battles a multi-billion-dollar food import burden, and that was a remarkable one as well. Also, the renewed drive for food security amid inflation pressures. Agriculture placed at the center of Nigeria's economic stabilization and food price control strategy increased attention on post-harvest losses estimated at 30 to 40% for perishables, triggered stronger calls for storage, processing and cold chain investment. And finally, on the biggest news that made waves in the year 2025 in the agricultural system, the livestock sector reform gained momentum. More emphasis on ranching, animal health systems and value chain development to replace open grazing. Now, alongside this big news, there were also major agricultural innovations and interventions in the year 2025, and the first of which was the seed system reform and local seed production, expansion focus on breeder seeds, certified seed distribution, and reduced import dependency. Also, there was growth of agri-fintech platforms for farmers' digital tools. They now provide farmers with credit scoring, input financing, insurance and market access. We also had some of the innovations along the lines of mechanization as a service model, expand tractor leasing, drone spraying and equipment sharing platforms also gained traction in the year 2025. Greenhouse and controlled environment farming adoption, especially for vegetables, for herbs and for export crops. And finally, digital marketplaces linking farmers to buyers, reduced middlemen influence and improved price transparency. These were some of the major headlines, that happened in the year, or innovations rather, and interventions as well, that happened in the year 2025. Now, I would say 2026 is looking good because some of the major interventions happened towards the end of the year, November, December, and I think that in the year 2026 we'll see the government go full into implementation of these newer policies. I hear that they're setting exemptions as well for agriculture in the taxing system. We all know that tax is quite a big conversation here in Nigeria because implementation started on the 1st of January 2026. So an exemption, a certain level of exemption of tax for farmers, it's definitely a welcome development because we'll see more people venture into agriculture. And so for today, we're getting into a conversation that would basically chart a course for the year 2026. We're talking about what happened in 2025 in the food systems. In fact, we heard bold promises, seed system reforms, food security interventions, agricultural financing, mechanization, and value chain development. Yet for many Nigerians, the reality remained unchanged. Food prices stayed high, farmers struggled with low profits, and post-harvest losses continued to drain value from the system. Now, this raises a very fundamental question. Are our agricultural policies delivering real impact or are they failing at the point of implementation? And for today on the Green Line, we're going to move beyond policy announcements to examine what must change in 2026. What will it take to turn strategy into supply, investment into income, and farming into a truly sustainable business? And to have this conversation, which I call a conversation of accountability, we have Mayedin Giwa, and he is the Managing Director of Gisa Agro. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you for having me. Well, I think you've really, addressed the first challenge that we're having in Nigeria, which is, I see the headline about seed. When you look at, the problem-riddling food system in Nigeria, it is not just about the availability. Mainly, it is about the stability. Now, this is to address this. It's all cut across systems. We've seen, a lot of good initiative coming up by 2026 based on the headlines that we've seen. Talking about seed coming in, talking about addressing post-harvest losses. But the real problem is in the system. You get to, so did farmer actually produce in 2025? What happened? They did cultivate. What happened? They were experiencing, pressures in terms of their price margin as a result of, there was import waiver that came in, which affected some staple food crops like rice, maize, and wheat. These are, major food. I understand government must, address hunger. Again, we're in the election cycle now. Is coming in. Is one of the key things that must be done. But if you look at what is really happening, it is at the expense of the farmers' efforts. And if you consider the cost of inputs that are involved in this, fertilizer, you get to see energy, you get to look at also logistics. The cost is still very high. And consumers are enjoying fair price. We had.
Are they?
No, they are. I'll say that because last year, early last year, rice was sold for about 80,000 naira to 90,000 naira, especially with the influx of the imported one too. But in around mid last year, it's changed. We now have rice as of today in 2026. We have rice around 50,000 to 55,000, depending on if it is the locally produced one or if it is the imported one. Now, the consumers are enjoying this, but what is the sustainability? Can the food system sustain itself with this approach of price reduction? It is at the expense of the farmers. Can we go forward on this note? It is not sustainable. I do not believe that farmers can continue to produce despite the rising cost. Now, there's a shift that we are experiencing recently. Farmers are trying to employ, move from local staple food to export and other alternative crops like sesame seed. They are looking at cash crops because it gives an higher return, and they are able to feel much more better in terms of what is the benefit for them. Now, so for government to address this, I think we need to move from just the announcement. We need to start looking at execution. What are the things that needs to be addressed? If you consider post-harvest issues, you see there's a problem with aggregation, there's a problem with logistics, there's problem with pricing, because when there is influx of new grains or new food into the system, it's more like we're supporting other country economy, and while our own is being jeopardized. Nigeria is blessed, we have arable land, but why exactly are we still found in this place? It is a problem of system, not that the food is not available. We need to stabilize it. We need to get storage facility in place. We need to provide a system whereby a farmer can confidently produce. Now, you talk about input financing. You've also addressed I'm not sure if you really mentioned about insurance, but
no. Which I think is one of the problem of farmers as well. I don't think that they look out for information about insurance, because I know that we've had conversations talking about whether insurance companies are willing to insure agricultural produce or farmlands and what have you. But we have a national system, that's NAEC, that is supposed to insure farmers' land, crop, and however it's been done there. But I don't think, first from the government, I don't think there's enough sensitization for the farmers to let them know that, look, you can insure your farmlands so that when there's a loss, in fact, especially at a time where we experience the security challenges that we experience here in Nigeria, and some of the other unforeseen contingencies that farmers also experience, right? So the government has not done enough sensitization, and the farmers have also not done enough research to find out if there are insurance opportunities, either for private or government insurance companies.
Okay, well, I like to say otherwise.
Okay.
The reason is because coming from somebody who is close to the field, I mainly operate on the field, and I am so close to the farmers. Okay. And what I've discovered is farmers are, knowledgeable about the insurance. Okay. But I think there is a problem in terms of digitizing and validating farmers on the field. Okay. And as of today, if you look at the data that is, we cannot really ascertain what is the exact number of farmers that we have. We can always use statistics, use approximate, but are they digitized? Can we have financiers to rely on validated data that could prove that these farmers are enrolled?
I thought the federal government was trying to address that. In November, there was a recent development that said that now the government will collect data of farmers and the allocation of their farms. Yeah. So the government can know where this farmland is located, what the farmer produces, and all of that. That data also helps public or private financiers to give to
That's the plan, but are we actually seeing it being executed? It's a problem of execution. Okay. When you look at, you could have fantastic plans, ideas, put on PowerPoint, put on papers, address it, but are they really followed to letter? So the challenge remains innovation. We've had corporate entities coming on board to start digitizing some of these things. But I think we need to centralize the data. We want, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics is there. There's a Nigerian Commodity Exchange. All these data, we need to have a central location whereby even if we could have NIN to say that it is the unique identity for each farmers to be recognized, and financiers, insurance company can look at how they can provide reliable data to investors that are willing to invest. The farmers need to get digitized. When they are being recorded on their platform, they get access. So insurance investors have access to reliable data to say, okay, I can price my risk. I can be assured. Before farmer could go to farm, I think that farmer needs to have a solid understanding about what is the likelihood of price they are going to sell their produce. Also, farmers should be able to know who are they going to sell their produce to. If I have that in my head, I don't need to be afraid of misaligned policy. I don't need to be afraid of inflation. All I need to consider is, at least even if there's going to be change, it should not be too surgical. I think that it can be moderated, and that is where this putting a system in place comes in. When you have data being plotted, another key issue is data is still missing. I agree that governments are looking at putting all these things in place. I'm really excited about this coming up, but I'm more concerned about it being executed. I think this 2026, let us be deliberate with our action. Let us digitize our process. We've seen in the West where farmers are able to predict the likelihood of yield they can get. AI is
based
there.
on the input.
And it's really helping. You can also, innovatively come about determining payment transparency. Investors don't need to think about a fear of somebody is going to run away with my money when they see that they can look at everything from their dashboard wherever they have from the world. So I think that we need to start acting on some of the plans that we have, and let it not just be an announcement and an announcement and announcement. And so when you look at the real challenge we are looking at in Nigeria as regards this food system, it is as a result of not having a system in place that can give us room to our food security, not a problem of production, not a problem of volume, not a problem of hectares. I think we need stability, and to get that stability, we need to have, you know, storage in place. We need to have, we have some of these things. It's just that they are not being utilized.
Okay, so now that you have made mention of the fact that we need systems in place, and this is what this conversation is about, basically charting a course for 2026 in the agricultural ecosystem. You have talked multiple times about structures and systems that need to be put in place to ensure that there is proper implementation of these policies. What systems and structures do you think would help the farmers come in 2026? Because we're here now, and we need to make progress.
Okay, thank you. I think I would like to address this with 3 things. Number 1 is risk sharing. Okay. Now, farmers do not have to start, you know, facing the challenge of suppressed prices, or climatic shock, or high cost of input that is really, you know, ravaging them. And I believe that addressing this will be that there are reliable information for farmers to leverage on to predict what the weather is going to look like. This way, when farmers are able to predict that, okay, if you look at this, currently we're supposed to be having a real-time harmattan, but the weather has really changed. We're not having it like that. 2-3 weeks back, it was raining in Ogun State and Lagos State. And so what are we going to look at during the expected rainy season? You know, it is still, we're expecting our NIMET to be able to provide us reliable data to say that this can happen, this may not happen. Now, going back to yield predictability, because I was talking about the systems, farmers should be able to determine that if I put in XYZ number of seed in maybe XYZ number of hectares, I should be able to get this. We've had it in the past to say, okay, if you plant an hectare, you can have 3 to 4 tonnage of maize on a land, but we're not really having it like that, because a lot of things are changing. One of it is this climatic shock. So coming to the system, when you have innovations that are addressing this, farmers can reliably go back to produce this staple food. Imports emergency should be seen as something temporary. You know, it doesn't have to be something we can rely on. I believe that farmers should remain focused on, you know, informations that can guide them on their operation. The second aspect is I'll say execution over, you know, announcement, or you know, over the public sharing of information. I think that farmers need to come around to look at their data to say, okay, we have planned on storage. Let us maintain what we have produced. You know, if you look at your data, you shared, you said early about 30 to 40% post-harvest loss. Can we actually address that? There are silos across different geopolitical zones. They are not being used. They are not being utilized. And
why is it a problem of the farmers, or is it a problem of the government in itself?
I think access also comes into play. Now, I'm speaking from the private sector. I'm not a government official. And when there's a need to say you want to, there are a lot of bureaucracy to approaching some of these things. I don't want to say this on the TV.
Say it now.
Okay. You know, there are a lot of things that needs to be addressed when it comes to access to have, you know, to all this and put them into use. I know that as a few companies had access to it, but when farmers are producing, it is that time. Let agencies like Nigeria Commodity Exchange take over the silos. When they take over it, they provide, you know, aggregations for people to aggregate at that location. It can be stored. When the major consumers of these foods are, you know, ready to use, we just go there, pick it up, and food will still be available for everybody. But if we are losing 40-60% of whatever we are producing, how many is left? We'll continue to import problems into our country, you know, helping other people, other economy. Nigeria is one of the most blessed countries in the world. But I think the problem is we are addressing this system, and this system does not just involve we talking about it. It is the implementation that is lacking.
Why does implementation continue to be such a big problem here in Nigeria?
So I said number one is to look at policy coherence, you know, and when I mentioned it, I talked about aligning our production, our policy with the reality of the market.
Yeah.
When you consider production to be very high, and you're seeing it that it's not reflecting in the results. Maybe you provide seed, you provide input, but what exactly is happening? There's a lot of massive loss as a sort of, mishandling or, lack of inadequate use of storage facilities. But when you, go into the risk sharing aspect, farmers are losing a lot of money because, the import thing that came on board in, it happened late 2024 to early 2025, and as of today, soybean is sold at around 570,000 per metric ton, and if you consider what it was last year, it was around 1,200. So looking at it, that's about 50% loss of your own capital. If you were in such position, you wouldn't like to engage in such kind of deal. So these are some of the major issues we are having with addressing the food system. Now, when you consider the aspect of how the farmers actually feel, they are moving, there's a big shift from the staple food to alternative food, and because they really need to make a lot of money from there. If we are dependent on importation, we will not be food sufficient, we will not be self-sufficient, and we will not be able to call ourselves giant of Africa again. We need to consider rethinking our approach by ensuring that the food system thing is being put in place through implementation and following it with monitoring and evaluation. Let us see the impact of, now you've said we wanted to have 50 billion has been injected for seed. What are the implementation things that are put in place? We talk about advisory roles. Farmers are experiencing a lot of massive losses, due to poor monitoring of what is in place and inadequate access to real data that can guide them on decisions, especially climatic shock. You can't predict what will happen, and we need more reliable data. We need to now start having AI to provide us data about what we should expect in whatever investment we are going into. So if we're investing, I think it's time to start having all our silos to be operational. If you are, if you are a commodity trading company or aggregating company, or if you are dealing with commodities that are, are relevant to having food security in our country, I think we should have all these to be utilized. Let the agency like let the Nigeria Commodity Exchange have it. With the like of AFEX is there, and they have warehouses at different places, but it's not enough. How then do we ensure that these things are being completely utilized? I realized lately the MD of Nigeria Commodity Exchange talked about harmonizing aggregators, traders, that they can have their place to aggregate their grains at strategic locations, but this system is yet to be digitized. Everybody should be able to have access to it. As of today, we don't have a website or something that is really running. It should be digitized. Everybody should be able to have access to it on their phone. But we've been talking about it. Do we have reliable data about all these things? Now, if you look at some top companies that are into this food, AFX, Strive, Agri, Babangona, and a host of others, the missing gap is still that, are we able to centralize our data so that people can, investors can come in to say, okay, we're able to invest without the fear of risk that is beyond even the farmer. Or risk that is beyond the trader, those who also store their grains. Because if I'm afraid that prices can go up, I won't invest my money into that. So these are the problems that we're facing. Again, investors have issues with credit scoring. The way I'm seeing Nigeria being able to their concerted effort on this taxation thing now, just on 1st of January, we're able to see that NIN, you're able to use to validate your tax ID. And that is actually something that we can also do. We can have it that everybody, if you're a farmer, just go on these social websites and confirm that this is your farmer ID. And so it's so simple to digitize the entire product, and everybody can check. If you are going to access any facility from any financial institution, your ID should be able to provide us a clue that if you are on a good credit score, for you to be able to access funds. And all these things will really help address the challenge that we are facing with the food system.
You've extensively explained some of the problems that or some of the challenges we experience when it comes to proper implementation of these policies. And I do agree that we need to move from a point where all of these things are being exemplified on paper to where it is being actually implemented by the government. But since we're trying to project for 2026, what should success in agriculture realistically look like at the end of this year?
Okay, I think we need to shift from food just being cheaper to food being stable.
Okay.
And we need to see that we can predict price, we can predict supply, we can predict timeliness of deliveries. And when all of these are put in place, especially these three key things, which are prices, which is the supply, and also the logistics, when they are fully addressed, I think that food will be better sufficient. But additionally, we must address post-harvest loss. It's a major issue. So when we have innovations like a simple tool that is addressing the issue with predictability, we need to understand that. Then we need to also have innovations, solutions that that can address payment issues, transparency, because another key thing people are afraid of is risk of losing their funds or losing their investment. So in this 2026, we can measure our success with clear predictability of the weather. We can measure our success with reliable logistic timeline. We can also measure it with price predictability. So across those three, we can use that as a leverage that in this 2026 we are good. And food farmers should be able to produce without the fear of price surge, fluctuation. Farmers should be able to produce without the fear of the climatic conditions. They should also be able to produce knowing fully well that they are not going to lose, especially beyond their production cost.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muhyiddin Giwa, for your contributions here. Definitely have helped us. I'm personally looking forward to a time where the agricultural sector will thrive, because there's so much that we can do in this sector. And if it is underutilized, thankfully, this tax exemption for agri, for food, it is also a step in the right direction, because it will encourage more people now to get into agriculture. Nigerians will always look for the easy way out, Now that this one is not taxed, maybe there's a prospect there. A lot of Nigerians will get into it, but it's important that we have these conversations so that they have the right knowledge. If you know what the challenges are, then you can mitigate them. Thank you so much again for joining us here on the show.
From the soil beneath our feet to the tables across the world, agriculture is the heartbeat of Nigeria's future. Yet challenges persist: limited finance, outdated methods, policy gaps, and untapped opportunities. The Green Line is here to change that. A groundbreaking weekly television feature that connects policy with practice, farmers with markets, and innovation with impact. We dig deep into the full agricultural value chain, from land preparation to mechanization, financing, food preservation, exports, and beyond. The Green Line isn't just a show, it's a national development platform. Join me every Friday at 11 a.m. only on Rapid TV, Star Times Channel 176, and online at www.rbnradiotv.com.
Now, what today's conversation makes clear is that Nigeria's food future will not be shaped by policy documents alone, but by how well those policies are implemented, monitored, and sustained. In 2026, the real test is not ambition, but execution, ensuring that farmers can produce profitably, food reaches markets efficiently, and Nigerians can afford what they eat. Now, the path forward demands coordination, investment, and accountability. And the choice made this year will define our food system for years to come. Now, we're wrapping it up right here and right now. And thank you so much for joining us on The Green Line, where we follow the policies, the people, and the practical impact shaping Nigerians' agricultural future. My name is Martha Alu. And remember, this episode will always be uploaded on our YouTube page at Official Rappi TV. You can catch us live at www.rbnradiotv.com. Thank you and see you next time.